Can there be peace and prosperity if 1/3 of the world literally prospers and the other 2/3 of the world live under siege and face calamitous threats to our well-being? What the world needs now, my friends, is that which is within the ambit of less than 200 persons who are willing and prepared to lead. Leaders must not fail those who elect them to lead. And I say to you, there is a sword that can cut down this Gordian knot, and it has been wielded before. The central banks of the wealthiest countries engaged in $25 trillion of quantitative easing in the last 13 years. 25 trillion. Of that, 9 trillion was in the last 18 months to fight the pandemic. Had we used that 25 trillion to purchase bonds, to finance the energy transition, or the transition of how we eat, or how we move ourselves in transport, we would now today be reaching that 1.5 degrees limit that is so vital to us. I say to you today in Glasgow that an annual increase in the SDRs of $500 billion a year for 20 years, put in a trust to finance the transition, is the real gap, Secretary General, that we need to close, not the 50 billion being proposed for adaptation. And if 500 billion sounds big to you, guess what? It is just 2% of the 25 trillion. This is the sword we need to wield. Our excitement 1 hour into this event is far less than it was 6 months ago leading up to this event. Can we, with those voices and these speeches from Sir David and others, find it within ourselves to get the resolve to bring Glasgow back on track? Or do we leave today believing that it was a failure before it starts? Our world, my friends, stands at a fork in the road. One no less significant than when the United Nations was formed in 1945. But then, the majority of our countries here did not exist. We exist now. The difference is we want to exist 100 years from now. And if our existence is to mean anything, then we must act in the interests of all of our people who are dependent on us. And if we don't, we will allow the path of greed and selfishness to sow the seeds of our common destruction. The leaders of today, not 2030, not 2050, must make this choice. It is in our hands. And our people and our planet need it more than ever. We can work with who is ready to go, because the train is ready to leave. And those who are not yet ready, we need to continue to ring circle and to remind them that their people, not our people, but their citizens, need them to get on board as soon as possible. Code red to the G7 countries. Code red to the G20. Earth to COP, that's what it said. Earth to COP. For those who have eyes to see, for those who have ears to listen, and for those who have a heart to feel, 1.5 is what we need to survive. 2 degrees, yes, SG, is a death sentence for the people of Antigua and Barbuda, for the people of the Maldives, for the people of Dominica and Fiji, for the people of Kenya and Mozambique, and yes, for the people of Samoa and Barbados. We do not want that dreaded death sentence. And we have come here today to say, try harder, because our people, the climate army, the world, the planet, needs our actions now, not next year, not in the next decade. Thank you.
Bringing their message from their countries to COP, we will now hear from climate campaigners in Chile and Egypt.
Mi nombre es Isis Riquelme, activista climática, ecofeminista y estudiante de Geografía de Chile, y hoy les hablo para que se escuche la voz de la juventud de Latinoamérica. Debemos escuchar el mensaje que nuestro planeta nos envía. El mundo no está mal porque hay una pandemia, hay pandemias porque el mundo está mal. Hago un llamado a los líderes del mundo a que comprometan acciones concretas para detener la extinción de nuestras especies y de la humanidad. Hoy, los jóvenes alrededor del mundo hemos demostrado ser el presente a través de proyectos e ideas que aportan a mitigar y o adaptarse a la crisis climática. Es deber de todos los gobiernos escucharnos, es nuestro futuro el que está en juego. Las niñas y jóvenes mujeres latinoamericanas albergan sueños e ideas del mañana. Nos hemos empoderado de nuestras capacidades y hemos avanzado en materia de educación socioambiental para enfrentar esta crisis. Los proyectos que los jóvenes impulsamos para abordar el cambio son un claro ejemplo de soluciones viables y concretas para entregar las herramientas necesarias para la adaptación y empoderar a nuestras comunidades a ser agentes de cambio a lo largo de los territorios. Hemos organizado los continentes para proteger nuestros océanos por la biodiversidad invaluable que albergan. Hemos instado a la sociedad civil de 80 países a realizar acciones concretas para mitigar la crisis climática y levantar exigencias y propuestas que ustedes puedan ejecutar en sus países. Nosotros, sus niños, sus hijos, hemos decidido colaborar globalmente para cuidar nuestro hogar, pero son ustedes quienes deciden cómo reedificarlo. Les insto a que escuchen y actúen. Debemos seguir construyendo sobre la ambición climática de la presidencia chilena en la COP25. Trabajar localmente para impactar globalmente y tomar en cuenta el conocimiento de la sociedad civil. Este es mi mensaje desde el planeta a la COP. Ayúdennos por favor a garantizar un futuro mejor. En sus manos están nuestras vidas y las de los que vienen. Lo que decidan en esta conferencia cambiará el rumbo de la humanidad. Es tiempo de actuar.
تحياتي. أنا عبد الفتاح ندى، ناشط في قضية التغير المناخي ورائد أعمال اجتماعي في مجال التمكين الاقتصادي. أحدثكم من مصر لأنقل لكم رسالة باسم شباب الأرض التي باتت مهددة بخطر التغير المناخي يوما بعد يوم، بل دقيقة تلو الأخرى. النشطاء الشباب من كل أنحاء العالم يتكاتفون سويا من أجل رفع الوعي العالمي تجاه مشكلات التغير المناخي، فلابد أن يدرك الجميع أن تلك المشكلات ليست رفاهية، إنما تشكل مصيرنا الذي يتحدد من خلال كل قرار فردي نقوم به يوميا، سواء يضر بهذه البيئة أو يساهم في منحها فرصة أخرى في البقاء. حان الوقت الآن أن يبني قادة العالم أجمع على جهودنا كنشطاء، وأن يضعوا السياسات العامة التي تتصدى لأزمة المناخ في مقدمة أولوياتهم. لقد قضيت ال6 سنوات الماضية في العمل مع المجتمعات المحلية الأقل حظا في التنمية داخل مصر، من خلال تدريب الشباب والقادة المجتمعيين على ريادة الأعمال الاجتماعية والتمكين الاقتصادي باستخدام نماذج المشاريع الصديقة للبيئة. وقد وجدت أن هناك الكثير من الفرص لتحقيق التمكين الاقتصادي في تلك المناطق من خلال تلك المشاريع الخضراء. فعلى الرغم من النظرة إلى هذه المناطق أنها لا تعتبر مشكلات المناخ من ضمن أولوياتها، إلا أن الشباب هناك لديهم الكثير من الحلول المبتكرة لبدء مشاريعهم الاجتماعية الصديقة للبيئة، والتي تمكنهم من تحقيق دخل مادي بالإضافة للتصدي لأزمة التغير المناخي. هذه رسالتي من كوكب الأرض لقمة المناخ. أدعو قادة العالم لوضع مفاهيم الاقتصاد الأخضر والاقتصاد الدوار على رأس قائمة السياسات الاقتصادية العالمية في السنوات المقبلة. أؤمن بأن ذلك قد يساهم في تحويل تلك المحنة لمنحة حقيقية. أخيرا، يأمل شباب مصر في ضيافة قمة المناخ التالية، ونرحب بكم في العام القادم لرؤية نموذج مشرف من جهود شباب مصر لحماية كوكبنا وضمان مستقبل أفضل لكل من يعيش عليه. فقط تخيلوا ما يمكننا تحقيقه معا إذا وضعنا هذا الهدف كمهمتنا الجماعية. شكرا جزيلا.
15% of the world's population have a disability. Here is a message on their behalf.
My name is Eddie Ndopu. Today, I'm speaking to you on behalf of the world's largest minority, the 15% of people in the world who have a disability. But make no mistake, there is nothing minor about who we are. We are larger than life, but because of systemic exclusion and inequality, our power and brilliance is often ignored or diminished. As an ambassador for the We the 15 campaign, I am here to tell you that we refuse to be rendered invisible in the climate action conversation. The impact of climate change is disproportionate for disabled people around the world. The change that climate change is creating is no longer a debate about the future or what might happen, because it is happening. We are some of the planet's most vulnerable citizens and some of the most resilient. But Earth is equally vulnerable, and its resilience is not without limits. We are dangerously close to reaching those limits. In my home in South Africa, I see the impact of climate change on our communities, on our economy, on our ability to grow food, and even to survive. I see a generation growing up with fear in their hearts at what the future holds. On behalf of everyone, disabled and non-disabled all around the world, I call on you to commit to concrete actions to stop the destruction of this magnificent planet. This conference is one of the most important meetings in history. You have the chance to make decisions and reach agreements which will affect the lives of generations to come. You are in a position of extraordinary power. You can change forever the trajectory we are on. You can make a world that is once again full of hope, not fear. This is my message from Earth to COP. On behalf of We the 15, I ask you, please help us to guarantee a safer future for every life, regardless of their ability.
Please welcome the Prime Minister of Italy, Mario Draghi.
Prime Minister Johnson, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the speeches we've just heard resonate deeply with me. Over the last few years, young people have done us a service by bringing the climate agenda on the front of our political debate. Young people were the center of the pre-COP summit in Milan. In Glasgow, here, we need to make them proud. Projected rising global temperatures is set to affect dramatically life on our planet. From catastrophic fires and floods we've seen now, to the bleaching of coral reefs, to the loss of biodiversity, the impact of climate change is already all too evident. Its price also rising fast, especially for the poorer nations. The cost of disruptions for households and companies in low and middle income countries amounts to a staggering $390 billion a year. Climate change also has serious repercussions on global peace and security. It can deplete natural resources and worsen social tensions, lead to new migration flows, and contribute to terrorism and organized crime. Climate change can tear us apart. Thanks to the constant dialogue and cooperation, we made good progress on addressing climate change. The G20 accounts for around 75% of global greenhouse gas emissions and around 80% of global GDP. At last weekend's summit in Rome, its member states agreed that we must limit the rise in global temperature to 1.5 degrees, was the first time, and committed to achieve net zero emissions by or around mid-century. We decided to step up our actions starting from this decade, enhance our nationally determined contributions, and stop the international public funding of unabated new coal by the end of this year. Here, at the COP26, we must now go further than we did at G20. We need to speed up our commitment to keep the rise in temperatures below 1.5 degrees. We need to build on the G20 agreement and act faster and more decisively. We must strengthen our efforts in the realm of climate finance. We must bring together the public and the private sector in new ways. We had a roadmap just made by Prince Charles. Prime Minister Johnson highlighted the amount of private money available. It's tens of trillions. But now we've got to use them. Now we have to find an intelligent way to spend them and spend them quickly. We need, first and foremost, that all multilateral development banks, and especially the World Bank, co-share with the private sector risks that the private sector alone cannot bear. We need country-based platforms where the World Bank and other banks, multilateral development banks, can actually co-share and make all this money usable to a good effort. This is the first, in a sense, great news that Prime Minister Johnson gave us today. That money is not a concern if we want to use it well. This COP26 must be the start of a new momentum, a quantum leap in our fight against climate change. And our youth must be at the center of this process. We intend to turn the event held in Milan into the future of all costs. Future generations will judge us for or fail to achieve. We must involve them, listen to them, and above all, learn from them. Thank you.
Please welcome back Yrsa Daly-Ward.
On Earth Day 2021, a competition was launched to give young people across the UK the opportunity to bring their voice to COP26. Together with Blue Peter, the longest-running children's programme in the world, COP26 asked them to use their creativity to send a message to you, the decision-makers of our planet. Thousands of children took part, and the film you're about to see brings to life the winning story written by Delphine, who has joined us here at the ceremony today. Delphine's story reminds us of what is so special about our world and why we should do everything in our power to protect our planet.
Delphine was a girl born in 2099. One day, her gran gave her a book, heavy with a spine. There were photographs of creatures she'd never ever seen. What are they, Gran, these animals? What does this all mean? Gran sighed. Many years ago, they roamed the earth and seas. But we bulldozed their homes and burnt down their trees. We put plastic in their oceans and greenhouse gases in the sky. But why did you let them, Gran? Why? Oh, why? Oh, why? I was just a child, she said. I shouted, no one took heed. Businessmen wanted money. It was nothing more than greed. That night, Delphine read on, and her eyes grew bigger and wider. And when she fell asleep, the creatures came to life inside her. Giant cat with golden stripes and glowing orange eyes, a candy floss pink bird taking off across the skies, a funny little lizard with color-changing skin, some speedy silver fish with spikes upon their fins. When the sun came up, the menagerie faded away, and Delphine's heart felt heavy in the cold grey light of day. Do you recognize them, dear readers of this tale?
In 2021, they're not figments of girls' imagination. We must protect them where we can for future generations.
To close the ceremony, please welcome climate and environmental activist Elizabeth Watuti.
My name is Elizabeth Watuti. I am a youth climate activist from Kenya. I have done a lot of soul-searching about what to say here today. I have asked myself over and over what words might move you. And then I realized that making my 4 minutes count does not rest solely on me. My truth will only land if you have the grace to fully listen. My story will only move you if you can open up your heart. I can urge you to act at the pace and scale necessary, but in the end, your will to act must come from deep within. I need to tell you what is happening in my home country. Right now, as we sit comfortably here in this conference center in Glasgow, over 2 million of my fellow Kenyans are facing climate-related starvation. In this past year, both of our rainy seasons have failed, and scientists say that it may be another 12 months before the waters return again. Meanwhile, our rivers are running dry, our harvests are failing, our storehouses stand empty, our animals and people are dying. I have seen with my own eyes 3 young children crying at the side of a dried-up river after walking 12 miles with their mother to find water. Please open your hearts. This is not only happening in Kenya. Over the past few months, there have been deadly heat waves and wildfires in Algeria and devastating floods in Uganda and Nigeria. And there is more still to come. By 2025, in just 4 years' time, half of the world's population will be facing water scarcity. And by the time I'm 50, the climate crisis will have displaced 86 million people in sub-Saharan Africa alone. I would like you to join me in holding a moment of compassionate silence for the billions of people who are not here with us today, whose stories are not being heard, and whose suffering is not being felt. Please open your hearts. If you allow yourself to feel it, the heartbreak and the injustice is hard to bear. Sub-Saharan Africans are responsible for just 0.5% of historical emissions. The children are responsible for none, but they are bearing the brunt. We are the adults on this earth right now, and it is our responsibility to ensure that the children have food and water. I have been doing what I can. Inspired by the great Professor Wangari Maathai, I founded the Green Generation Initiative, a tree-growing initiative that enhances food security for young Kenyans. So far, we have grown 30,000 fruit trees to maturity, providing desperately needed nutrition for thousands of children. Every day, we see that when we look after the trees, they look after us. But these trees and the life-saving fruit they bear will not survive on a 2.7 degrees Celsius warmer planet. The decisions you make here will help determine whether the rains will return to our land. The decisions you make here will help determine whether the fruit trees we plant will live or perish. The decisions you make here will help determine whether children will have food and water. I believe in our human capacity to care deeply and to act collectively. I believe in our ability to do what is right if we let ourselves feel it in our hearts. So for these next 2 weeks, let us feel it in our hearts. The children cannot live on words and empty promises. They are waiting for you to act. Please open your hearts and then act. Thank you.
You have heard Earth's impassioned message to you all. Earth is calling for action this day. This has been Earth to COP.
Egypt opens up to the world. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi meets with world leaders.
أعبر لكم عن خالص الشكر والتقدير على حفاوة الاستقبال وكرم الضيافة.
Reaffirming Egypt's vision, delivering our voice abroad.
لتطوير التعاون الثنائي الاقتصادي والعسكري إلى مستويات غير مسبوقة.
Discussing regional and international developments.